What's your favourite escape story? Your favourite escape story. Have you got one? It might be from the Bible, it might be from a movie, it might be from a novel that you've read, or a true account in history. Is there any one of those stories that really gets to you? Have you ever read an escape story, or even watched an escape movie? Is it easy to fall asleep during such a thing, especially when the moves are on? It's not, is it? They have you sitting on the edge of your seat, and you're there, your heart's pumping with the people who are on the run, and you realise what's going on and you want to get out. You almost feel part of the rush to get out. You feel the claustrophobia and tension of the tunnel or whatever it is. You feel the breathing, the gusts of air in and out of your lungs as you're running flat out to get away from the bullets and from the searchlight. You freeze. You just share all the emotions of the event, because escapes aren't slack or casual stories, are they? Escapes really build up the feelings of tension and alertness and awareness in us. And you know what I'm talking about? Do you know what I'm talking about? Hello? Yeah, I think, has anyone not seen an escape story and not seen what I'm talking about? Anyone? Right, good. It's really gripping stuff, as they say. Really gripping stuff. And an escape story I find fascinating is one of the biggest breakouts in all of history. The Israelites out of Egypt. Hey, think of that one. Try and relive that one for a few moments. Others are more personal. And one family I know in Tassie are among many thousands of families who escaped from Hungary after the Iron Curtain fell and the communists took over. Do you know anyone that's come from Eastern Europe that had to escape for their lives and get out? This family, their sons have grown up now and they've got grandsons, but when they got out of Hungary, it was just a young man and a young woman and their baby boy, 2 years old. They didn't like communism. Communism was oppressive. It was a killer. It stamped out their freedoms. It stamped out their rights. It destroyed people's morale. It changed the whole fibre of their race, of their outlook. It was going to destroy a people. And this family, among thousands of others, did not want to sit around and let it happen. So they, along with others, plotted and planned, and one night they made their break. Typical of those stories is that they can't carry much with them. They've got to travel enormous distances on foot, generally in the chill of winter and in darkness where there doesn't seem to be very much guidance at all, except somebody who says, "I know the way, come with me, I'll show you." And when it came time to go, it was time to go. There was no announcing it to the neighbours. There were no farewell parties. There was no handing in leave to the workshop. There was no packing as such. They just put on whatever clothes they could wear reasonably and move, because you couldn't carry anything, especially not if you're trying to take a little baby with you. You could only carry reasonable hand luggage and your child, and off you go. And out there are killers trained to stop you, and they were too. The guards, the border guards, with guns and searchlights and dogs and barbed wire and all sorts of barriers. There were treacherous informers, and all the while the escapees were being looked for. There were patrols. It was dark and it was cold. This particular family had to wade through a river in the middle of winter, because when it was time to go, it was time to go. It didn't matter if they were sick or not. This was the big break. And away they went. On climbing out of the chilling river, the clothing on them froze solid because it was so close. And they had to crack it as they walked. And they had to keep the little boy way up on their shoulders, high and dry, so that he wouldn't die of the cold. They were shot at, they were hounded, but they went for it. Even to this day, when they talk about their experience, you can feel the tension, you can feel the urgency, and nobody yawns. Because their life was on the line, absolutely on the line. Does that story ring a bell with you? Who are we in the story? That's a true story, and ours is a true story too. An escape story that is going to make the liberation of the Israelites look like a Sunday school picnic, as they say, although I don't know if we can say that anymore. But it's going to be the liberation of the great crowd through the Great Tribulation. Read about that? You're in it. You're in it. We in the last days are in an escape situation. You read your book of Revelation. You are being pursued by venom-spitting, fire-breathing demons are on your tail. You're breaking out of a wicked world that is doomed. Not only is it a totalitarian regime under the thumb of the most brutal dictator in universal history, Satan, you wouldn't want to live or share in a world like that. Not only that, but the entire region of this old world in which we live is targeted for the most horrifying holocaust of a destruction that's ever been unleashed on this planet. So we've got twofold reason to get out. One is we hate the regime, and the second is if we stay anywhere near it, we're finished. And that's every reason to run. To really, really run. To pick up our legs, pick up our motivation, and go. Because if we don't, we are surely done. We will be done by this wicked world, and we will be done again in its destruction. There is nothing to stay here for. Well, the tunnels have been dug, the holes in the fence have been cut, we've got guides, we've got our torches, we've got our gear, we know exactly what escape route to take. Are we living in an escape mode in these last days? The answer, sadly, is no, not all of us are living in an escape mode or treating life in an escape disposition. No, we are not. Jesus said that we should be in escape mode. In Luke 21, this passage of the Bible that we say to people urgently, look, these are the times of the end. This is the last era. This is the last generation. See here, read it. In Luke 21, wars, famines, pestilence, earthquake, signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, anguish of nations, people not knowing the way out. Interesting, that expression, isn't it? Not knowing the way out. Christians know the way out. If people knew the way out, they'd take it. But Jesus said in verses 34 to 36, pay attention to yourselves that your hearts never become weighed down with overeating and heavy drinking and anxieties of life, and suddenly that day be instantly upon you as a snare. For it will come in upon all those dwelling upon the face of the earth. Keep awake then all the time, making supplication that you may succeed in, what's the next word? escaping all these things that are destined to occur, and in standing before the Son of Man. Jesus, in that passage of Scripture that we turn to enthusiastically to prove that we're living in the time of the great showdown, is saying to all Christians, now you, during this era, you must get out. You know the way out. You don't become faint out of fear, anguish of nations, due to not knowing the way out. You know the way out. So get out. And that's what he's saying there, and he uses the word escaping, because that is what our mode should be. We should be on full red alert escape mode right now, the nearer that we are getting to the showdown, to the Holocaust. In Matthew 24, which is a parallel quote of what we've just read, you'll notice that Jesus there in verse 19, well, maybe we could read 15 to 18 actually. Therefore, when you catch sight of the disgusting thing that causes desolation, as spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in a holy place, let the reader use discernment. And we've used discernment, and we've seen the disgusting thing standing in the holy place. So what? All that's happened. So what? So what? Verse 16 is so what? Let those in Judea begin fleeing to the mountains. Let the man on the housetop not come down to take the goods out of his house, and let the man in the field not return to the house to pick up his outer garment. It's breathless stuff, isn't it? Saying when you see it, go. Don't fiddle. Go. God's word screams that warning to us. It tells us that we are part of the greatest breakout that will ever occur. Jehovah's Witnesses, a great crowd of little people from nowhere, are going to be busted out of the most wicked and oppressive regime ever formed. And we are it, and we're on our way, aren't we? Hopefully. Hopefully. It's a long run, and our safety is not yet. You don't stop running until you've reached your goal, until you've reached total safety. Our deliverance is getting near. But don't confuse deliverance with escape. Escape is what you do. Delivering is what God does through Jesus Christ. So you and I have got to run. Now, did you detect in Matthew 24, 15 to 18, Jesus was saying, what's more important to you? That you get out? Or that you're caught with everything you've got now? What was he emphasizing? I think he was emphasizing what we would all regard as absolute, sheer, common sense survival. That if you were threatened by anything immediate and physical, you would not be thinking of the peripherals. You'd be thinking of getting out and getting safe. Isn't that the case? Common sense escape behaviour. And yet why do we still, in these last days of such amazing fulfilment of Bible prophecy, do we see an almost yawning disposition toward the Christian's escape from this wicked and terrifying world? Have you read Revelation, studied the book, looked at the pictures? What is out there ready to get you? What is in this world? What is hot on your heels? What is ready to pounce? Sometimes in our run, the stronger ones have to turn around when they hear the screams, certainly not uttered, but spiritual screams unuttered, of people that have got the jaws and the claws of our pursuers on their neck, their claws around their throat. And we have to turn back and we have to fight these things to help this person who was casual and let themselves get caught. risk our own necks, but we do it to save our brothers and sisters and to give them the motivation and encouragement to keep going. And they're carrying their scars around with them to this day. Some are still bleeding from being caught up with by the wicked one and are still not running as though their lives depended on it. Can we be casual about escape? A question for honest consideration. Do I have an escape mentality? Is that an overriding theme in my thinking, in my behaviour, my daily ways? Am I living as an escapee? The answer, sadly, for many is no. Why is it so hard, brothers and sisters? Well, it's hard to maintain because we're supposed to be running, but physically we're not actually going anywhere. And that's what makes it confusing, isn't it? And we are physical people. We are real, tangible, material, physical people. We live and think and act like humans. Tonight, even if we should be remotely touched or stirred by our discussion, we will have our song, we will have our prayer, we will have a pleasant chat, and we will go home to bye-byes. And it is all so normal, and it is all so routine, and we will get up in the morning and we'll have our brekkie, and we'll face the day. The birds will be twittering in the trees, the sun will be shining because it's going with the world. And we do not see the menace. We do not see the killers. We do not see the pursuers focusing in their sights, drawing a very, very tight target to hit us right where it matters. We don't even present them a moving target sometimes. It is tragic. We're supposed to be running, but not actually going anywhere. Some say that we are in the most unusual escape of history. It will be the greatest, but it is also the most unusual, because we have to be stay-put escapees. And that's not easy to handle, is it? What is our escape? Is it a physical one? Ultimately, the deliverance will be a physical one. But our escape is spiritual, ideological. It's an escape of attitudes. It's an escape of ideas. It's an escape of lifestyles. And that's why it is so hard. Because sometimes, because we're used to it, the oppressive regime doesn't look all that bad. What's the panic? What's all the excitement about? What's the rush? You know, if everybody in an escape party started to feel that way, and each one started to walk slower and said, well, it won't matter if I just wind back a little bit. And then the next person says, it won't matter if I just wind back a little bit. And the next person says, it won't matter if I just slow down and relax a little bit. What are you doing to the ones that want to get away? Diluting the entire escape attitude to a point where no one thinks it's urgent anymore. We just blob along, hoping for the best. There's no zip, there's no fire, there's no tension. There's no concern, there's no fear. As a result of our diminished activity and attitude, we could be warping the attitudes of others, cause them to slow down too. They look at me and they're saying, well, if he doesn't run that hard, maybe it's not that important. And we can end up delivering ourselves on a plate to the foe, and won't they have fun with us when they catch us? Oh yes. We're supposed to be running. Spiritually, we should be going places. We should be putting enormous distances between the world and us. But physically, it involves doing something too, because we're people, for goodness sake. We watch, we listen, we see the behaviour of others. And even though it's a spiritual escape, we have to be seen to be escaping. There has to be that that crackle there in the whole of our activities. Otherwise, the whole thing just gets layered over with foam of apathy, maybe tiredness, and everyone else ends up going under too. Do you think it'd be easier if it was an all-out physical escape like the Israelites? Well, don't bet on it. You might think that this is an impossible way to escape, but I can tell you about a man who had a physical escape to make, and he's in the Bible. And this is one of the most incredible, frustrating accounts I have ever read. Turn with me to Genesis 19. If you think that a physical escape would be any easier, you might think so. But many, many people have been caught by their own attitudes halfway through an escape, proving that it's attitude that's of ultimate importance, not just that you can see where you've been and where you've got out from and where you're heading, coming closer. In a way, a physical escape is easier at the start. You start running. Generally, there's panic. But if you don't have a complete attitude, just read this with me and excuse me for the frustrations I'm going to express, because every time I read it, I get crankier and crankier about this incident. Now, just imagine yourself as a resident of Dresden in World War II. Do you know what happened there, Dresden? Terrible thing. It received one of the greatest bombings that destroyed world treasures and an industry, skills, and was terrible. Anyway, you're a resident of Dresden, World War II, and the people starts tomorrow. When? Tomorrow morning. You're going to spend the night in Dresden? What are you going to do? You're going to get out of the place. I mean, the plans are set. The planes have taken off. And you wake up the next morning, you're still in Dresden. You can almost hear the engines of the Lancasters over the channel, you know? And there's people still saying to you, excuse me, get out of here. And you're saying, where will I go? I mean, you can hear the engines, but what will I do? Let's read it. You know what they discovered where Sodom and Gomorrah used to be? They've discovered the same kind of crystals in the area that obviously suffered extraordinary fusion, nuclear, similar to what they're finding where atom bombs have been dropped. You know? So what did God unleash on Sodom and Gomorrah? It must have been really something. And this man that we're talking about is Lot, and he's referred to as one of the good ones, faithful man. Anyway, God loves him so much that he sends angels to tell him to get out of Sodom and Gomorrah. Move. And on the day of the destruction, where's the man? He's in Sodom and Gomorrah. When the dawn ascended, read with me from verse 15, then the angels became urgent with Lot, saying, get up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are found here, for fear you may be swept away in the air of the city. When he kept... I can't believe it. What's that word? I can't believe it. Then, in the compassion of Jehovah upon him, the men seized hold of his hand and of the hand of his wife and of the hands of his 2 daughters, and they proceeded to bring him out and to station him outside the city. And it came about that as soon as they had brought them forth to the outskirts, he, that is, this angel, began to say, "Escape for your soul! Don't look behind you and don't stand still in all the district. Escape to the mountainous region for fear you may be swept away." And now this is the part that I can't understand. I mean, the power is launched. It's on its way from the heavens. It's targeted. It's on its way. And Lot said to them, "Not that, please, Jehovah. Please, now. Your servant has found favour in your eyes, so that you are magnifying your loving kindness, which you have exercised with me to preserve my soul alive. But I..." Pause. Fair dinkum. The blast is on its way, and the man's giving a speech. And he's, I don't know how many times he said please, and he's even pausing. Eh? But I... Scratches the ear, looks around. I'm not able to escape to the mountainous region, for fear calamity may keep close to me and I certainly die. Please, now, this city is nearby to flee there, and it is a small thing. May I, please, escape there? Pause. Is it not a small thing? Huh? Pause. And my soul will live on? I can't read anymore. It's too frustrating. The power is on its way, and the man is standing on the outskirts of the city, fiddling around. Lot had to be hustled to the outskirts of the city physically. And his dilly-dallying experience frightens me more and more every time I read it. It is a real worry. You think about it. I mean, the forces of destruction were on their way. The angel, you read on, the angel didn't even want to hang about. I think he was involved in doing it. But the angel didn't want to hang around. Had to be hustled out. To be hustled. I can't figure it out. What do you think of that? Talk about it amongst yourselves. What do you think about that? I'll tell you an interesting thing, though. Jehovah God helped him because Jehovah God knows we are flesh, and he knows our foibles and our weaknesses. He knows our lack of faith. He understands humanity in our sinful and imperfect state, and he'll help you. But, you know, how much? How far? Is there a difference between can't and couldn't care? Is there? Is there a difference between I believe and I'll take my time, thanks? There's a difference, isn't there? There's a difference. Lot had to be hustled out. How do you feel when an appointee of Jehovah grabs you and says, "Get going," and hustles you a little bit? How do you feel? I'll tell you how those who are not in escape mode feel. They say, "Get off, leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. Get off." Quite capable of making my own decisions. I'm quite capable of knowing what to do. Well, if a good man like Lot was not, Jehovah had to send angels, and he's got procedures. You can read in your Bible about the procedures that God uses to get people that are going to be absolutely scythed by this whole system, how to get them moving. and you better respond and get running, and get moving. Noah was an outstanding example of a stay-put escapee. Now, he was a classic, showing that attitude always trumps the nature of the escape. See, the nature of the escape is one thing, to find the energy for a physical escape, but the attitude is what always provides the motivation to make it good. And Noah had to stay put. He had to go and do his escape work every day and then go back home. He had to stay put and yet be the most different man in the neighbourhood. He was prepared to show it. He was prepared to stick up for what he believed in, that the world was ending and this was the time of the end. His entire way of life, for himself, his wife and his family, showed that they were escapees. Now, I don't know if you'll recall the Noah drama that we had just a few years ago at the district convention. Can any of you remember it? It was a beauty. It was the second Noah drama that I can remember, and it was even better than the first one. And the entire thrust of that drama was how to handle our stay-put escape. Can you recall that? It was how to handle our stay-put escape. How to make it good, how to make it into the area of deliverance. And it was a very moving drama. And I was reading through the script of the brother that did the introductory and concluding talk that they have in the dramas. And it was very interesting, and you might well record the last word he said. Can you recall it? Well, it was interesting. It was just a very short word. A very short word. And it was a one-word sentence. It had an exclamation mark on the end of it. And he was talking to us about how we should handle our escape, how we should be approaching our whole way of life. And just before that last word was a whole line of instruction as to how the brother was to read it. Do you want me to read it the way he was supposed to read that last word? Can you recall what the word was? It was, run! And that's nothing compared to the way it came across at the convention. 2,500 people and Launceston levitated. And you might think, well, why? Why shout it? I mean, fair income, do we need tricks? Well, I don't know what we need sometimes. I really don't. Brothers and sisters, I really don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do anymore in getting people to move. I think it's the most tragic thing when someone has made the jump and made the first few steps of an escape, maybe even run well for a while with full enthusiasm, and who's prepared to let those mongrels who are pursuing us, Satan and his patrols, his demons and his stooges, they're prepared to let them catch up with them, drag them down to the earth and just claw them to pieces. It's a terrible sight. And what can you do? Well, some of those that have escaped from places like Hungary and elsewhere have said about the tragic things. Sometimes they're not easy to talk about, but sometimes there'll be a family, father, mother, children, uncles, aunties, cousins. The patrols catch them, or maybe one, or shoot one. What do you do? You're all making your big break for freedom, you and your family, you and your household. This is it, your big chance. And a terrible explosion is heard, a shot, and one of them falls down, dead. What do? You got a choice, eh? These people have had a choice. They stop and all get caught. Or they can keep going. Because surely to goodness that's what any decent person would have wanted for their family, eh? That they make it, surely? Do you agree? Or do we stop and all get caught? And sometimes you just can't stop. We are in a desperate and dramatic time. We are part of the biggest breakout ever. There's going to be jubilation and legends about what we are doing, told forever. You better believe it. The breakout of the great crowd from right out of Satan's hand. It's going to be an amazing thing. What are your escape activities? Well, this is the part that no one likes. Here is how you run. Here is how you get out. This is what you do. What do you think I'm going to say? This is what you do. And this is where we go, oh, I know that. All that build up just to tell us to carry out our acts of personal godly devotion at home. Meeting attendance. Weekly field service. I mean, if that's all you wanted to get up and say, pal, why didn't you just get up and say, brothers, carry out your acts of godly devotion at home, come to all the meetings and get out in the field service once a week and sit down, save us all this. But all of what I've just said, our escape activities, acts of personal godly devotion at home, meeting attendance, rigorous, unfailing, wheeled in, death warmed up, wheelchair, rug down the orthodox cold, meeting attendance, and weekly field service, being there with others so that they know you're still running, so they still feel the urgency of it all. Let's not lull ourselves into a situation that could cost others their lives. If any of us want to back down from our escape activities, so be it. You wear it. You wear the claw on your shoulder. Die with it if you want. But you realise when you slow down, other people think that it may be all right to do so too. They do. That's how it happens. It's just a spreading sickness that can occur. It can half wipe out a congregation. So your escape activities, if you're a serious escapee, acts of personal godly devotion at home, meeting attendance, weekly field service. That is why I was so rude earlier as to say that not everyone is escaping, because these escape activities aren't happening among many. These are our escape activities. Know these things, no escape. That's the way it is. Keep running with endurance, brothers and sisters. You can make it, because Jehovah will help you. Remember, he sent angels for Lot. He sent miracles for the Israelites at the Red Sea. And in describing the Red Sea incident in just one last choice verse from Exodus 19 verse 4, this is how it's going to be. If you go for it, this is how it's going to be for you. Later, when we've made our escape, and then when we have been delivered, this is what will be said of us, escapees from the antitypical system of Egypt of today. Our God will remind us, as we rejoice in God's new world, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, that I might carry you on wings of eagles and bring you to myself. Brothers and sisters, run.